Well, everyone, it's time to talk about Jedi Survivor. It really is, and I'm glad we waited because now Matt is at least 15 hours into the game.
Fairly sure I'm in the... You know when a game's ramping up towards the end, you're like, oh, I know there's going to be like one bit and then a finale. I'm at that point. So I've got pretty much most of the game. I'd say I have a lot of side stuff done.
Sweet. So you're in that. I've been actually playing the game that came out before it, but it's an interesting situation. By no doubt you've heard about what's going on, and you maybe like me just thought, oh yeah, it's just generally performance issues, unoptimized, not great. Matt's definitely going to bring a perspective from actually playing a lot of the game into that is honestly kind of fascinating with what the game's actually trying to pull off. But effectively what this is a classic sequel. Right? It's just trying to let's hit the similar thing, do it big and better. One of the things that I think has impressed a lot of people, at least certainly the commentariat, is that this was a 3.5 year development cycle. And the crazy thing is, I've generally seen people say 3.5 years, oh wow, that's about half of what it takes to make a full game, full AAA. I think that is more an indictment of very large AAA dumpster fires, like how it's taken Rocksteady an infinite amount of time to make the Suicide Squad game that they're currently making. I think when you look at more of a gold standard, almost not gold standard, but you look at what's Ubisoft, whenever they just go into content mode with no innovation, the amount of Assassin's Creed they can pump out per unit time is pretty crazy. But still, it does seem like it's a pretty damn good effort for the amount of time spent, especially considering some of that time did involve them maybe having to revamp a little bit of their process of work. Give it everything that went on. It's also the last game to be released under Electronic Arts' exclusive Star Wars license. Now, they will be able to make Star Wars games after that, we presume. It's just the original license that was the very dramatic one that's the end of the games from that period.
Yeah, that license that EA absolutely bungled throughout most of having it right until the end when they made Fallen Order and Star Wars Squadrons. I mean, I know Battlefront 2 ended up being okay, all said and done, but it's also the game that maybe killed loot boxes as well for being so brutal.
And it was also, it was way better by the end, and right when they, I think, had an opportunity to really make that game larger in terms of its player base because it had so much, good buzz, it just completely dropped support. It's like, great, we fixed the game, job done. Where for a lot of people, they would have thought, oh, you fixed the game, great, I can come back and play it. Oh, there's no more future in it. All right, then, I'll do something else. Now, some context. This game was announced in May 2022, right? The release date was shown December 2022. It was delayed 6 weeks, though, from March 17th to April 28th. And they said it's in order for the team to hit the Respawn quality bar, and to, just the level of polish that the fans deserve. People accepted that. It was shortly after we had a very positive launch for Dead Space that itself had a delay. So people thought, okay, great, right? That's going to be fantastic. But cracks, absolutely cracks started to show in the pre-launch communications, I think. Because one of the tweets that they said was that our first patch will arrive on launch day. In the weeks ahead, we'll deploy patches that will fix bugs, improve performance, and, add more accessibility. A lot of these are, whenever I saw this, I was deeply suspicious about what this game's launch quality would be. I think the internet was, and the internet was right.
That's called setting expectations, and everyone in the industry is starting to learn that they have to do that. Because if they don't tell you the game is broken, you'll assume it isn't, and then you'll buy it. Whereas now you should look for tweets like this and go, oh, so I shouldn't buy this game? Because if you're thinking, why are EA telling us that this game's going to be fixed? Well, they're telling it it's going to be fixed. If it's going to be fixed, what does that imply about it now? Oh, it needs fixed, it's broken. That's ultimately what ended up coming. But it was like a 1-2 punch. Where, of course, you go, hey, here's expectations. This game's busted. Please don't buy it. But also, there's New Game Plus mode, and that'll be really good. So if you buy it and play it and don't like it and want it to be fixed, you can go back later and play on Purity or Warrior or Trendsetter and have all these new features, which I think is perfectly how to explain this game. One hand, busted, broken, technical nightmare, shouldn't have been released. Other hand, everything that you might want out of Jedi is in this game.
Yeah.
In a way where the designers and the content people have done outstanding work, But the people on the technical side of it, not to say they haven't done outstanding work, but they weren't, obviously, arguably, they weren't given enough time to do this, or they kind of overshot what they were going for. Because there's something key about this game and why it's broken that you'll understand by the time we actually talk about it. But it is actually like, it's busted for a reason. Not a good one, but a reason.
Yeah. I think what's interesting is that the performance issues are not, because Matt may have sounded like a PC gamer there. No, he was playing it on PS5.
Yeah, it's the first time I've played a new game in the PS5 and encountered performance issues. Like, even with playing Forspoken at launch, which has a terrible PC port, on PS5, I was like, yeah, this is perfectly fine. Any other game I've picked up has been flawless. This game has been, I don't want to say awful, because it's functioned, and I've only had one hard crash, which is something that I thought console certification was supposed to mean your games didn't crash on your console. Sony, what are you doing? Why has it gotten this bad? But also, like, I would call it unacceptable. I would call it unacceptable, even though the game itself is very, very good.
Now, as for the review process, it was, from what we understand, decently quick by all accounts. Copies were provided about a week before launch. These copies did receive a mid-review process patch that remedied some performance. They also communicated to reviewers that there would be a patch there, like launch day for customers. Now, the idea of having a mid-review period patch, that does actually happen. I mean, as an example, I think the review build of The Pale Beyond went out in December. The game came out the 28th of February or 24th of February. Of course, that's very different from 1 week. Now, in terms of the code distribution, though, only a week. Sometimes, when the weirder things are for launch code, the more that we by default start to get a little bit, suspicious. In this case, it's one that does feel like desperation, because they try to give themselves that 6 weeks. They've probably crunched insanely to get this game running. All I can say is, we know what it's like now. Can you imagine the technical state of this back in March?
Oh, this would have been like probably completely unplayable.
It's probably unlaunchable. Well, yeah. Evidently it was. Yeah. Some would say it still is.
Yes, I would say it still is from a consumer perspective. I would say it's unlaunchable. That's absolutely true.
Yeah. So I'm going to do a quick skim of the reviews before we actually talk about it, because now that you've been playing a lot of it.
Yeah.
All right, Metacritic, 89% recommend, average of 86. Those are really, really good numbers. And
I roughly agree with that.
Yeah, roughly. Yeah. Now, of course, that's one of those things. A lot of people have provided a bit of kickback to that. As an example, you look at the Skill Up launch day review, and that's what this video is called. I absolutely cannot recommend it. In the brackets, he does say, but I really wish I could. And that's like a little bit of a difference between a very, like, I am reviewing this game, a consumer product, you'll watch my video and make a decision, versus what a lot of outlets will do, which will say, we will review this as a game, and our review will be timeless.
Yeah.
So that's like a little bit of a difference. We're going to jump into that later on, like this week in the channel. But like, your TLDR basically is people saying the narrative stuff is really strong, and it is just a lot of bigger and more ambitious.
It's really like, I'd love to get into real depth about those, but that does basically cover it. It is, hey, what if Fallen Order was naturally made bigger without any fundamental changes, but they also took like the kind of, hey, we're going to stretch our AAA story game legs a little bit on this.
Yeah.
So we're going to have incredible acting from all of the characters. We're going to have like well-written dialogue. We're going to have nice narrative beats, nicely paced, all that stuff. And it's really good in the sense that if you ignore the technical issues, this game probably is for most people around 85. I would say I feel closer to maybe a 75 or an 80 for reasons that I'll get into, because I'm an asshole about combat being really, really smooth and really well designed. And this gets most of it right, but has a couple of issues that I'm sure most like reviewers won't really care about too much, because they'll be focused on the overall experience.
Well, I know that even the Skill Up did point out the issues that he had with the combat, but still said, like, love the game, absolutely can't recommend it. So, even for some people, it's like, even if the combat is serviceable enough, the overall experience ends up working.
And I can completely see why, because like specifically Cal and Cameron Monaghan, his actor, it's like, that is an extremely believable performance. One of the better I've seen in video games. especially as it takes a very, hey, we're going to be a super character focused game. As anything should be. Like, I would go so far as to say this is peak Star Wars. I'm not a big Star Wars fan, but it's peak Star Wars and kind of, here's some Jedi stuff, here's some Jedi spirituality, here's some of the grimy realism of like living in a world, here's a load of aliens and alien architecture stuff. They set out to make a Star Wars game and they absolutely nailed it in every way, but just a couple little things kind of hold it back.
Yeah, right. Let's get into the public response. Whenever I first saw it, the Steam reviews were like 23%, mostly negative. Now they are 52% positive, which, look, you know what it's like. Our peak players, 67,500, but undoubtedly that is humongously impacted. Humongously so by the performance. Just about everybody heard, do not buy this game, especially on PC. So if it even got those numbers, and again, its refund rate, I mean, I know that ours for Pale is below average. I know what the average is. I have to assume theirs is like well over double the average. It must be. Given how it really seems to basically barely work for some people. Now, the negative reviews primarily are performance. A few people maybe wanted a bit more or a bit different from the game. Some people unhappy about Steam Deck. I don't think this game would have ever... I mean, it would be a miracle to put it on deck. It's not that it was really sold as being a thing that could be on deck.
See, that's the thing, right? It's perfect for deck. It is the perfect Steam Deck game because it is a game that's perfect with controller. You've got nice little bite-sized level stuff. It's got 3D platforming. It's got action combat. It's the perfect game people would want to play on Steam Deck. However, the people who were working pre-production and decided at EA and Respawn and Lucasfilm Games, the people who were making what the game would be, they didn't give a shit about that. They didn't think about the end user experience. They went, make it very pretty. Make it the prettiest damn game I've ever seen. And they went and did that. And it didn't go very well. And now people are going, but this is like a PS3 game in essence, in nature, in the good way. This is one of those old school games I'd love to just play on the Steam Deck. But I can't. Because it's really pretty. Well, what does it being very pretty serve then?
Here's a funny thing, and this is, we see it all the time in reviews. Somebody who's just saying like, this literally doesn't work for me, thumbs down. They end up fixing it by saying that it's solid, entertaining, loving it so far, a rare win from EA. I would recommend the game, but they didn't remember to update their review to say recommended. But overall, that's like kind of the situation. Another part of that is just like, if you have really good hardware, you do expect to have a appropriately good experience. This is a game that has been having, like, even as an example, like really bad GPU utilization. Not being good at using all of your cores. And like Respawn, I think they issued a statement that said, issues on, super modern, like highly threaded CPUs. But you think like, well, hang on. The new consoles have highly threaded modern CPUs. Mike Bithell said that PC's not a platform, it's millions of slightly different platforms built at home from parts. Every major, bug-free launch is a miracle. I would say mostly, but a lot of that, unless you have like a real specific driver or platform problem, there's like a few different buckets of computer setup to test.
See, I'm going to put on my consumer advocate hat for this, right?
Oh yeah, where you released it in PC, that comes with the territory.
Yeah, my consumer advocate hat has me saying, that's dev cope. Who cares about the realities of game development? You're supposed to release an experience. And if you can't release an experience on the PC platform, that's what the end user considers a platform. Do you buy a PS5 or do you buy a PC and play your own games on Steam? That's the reality of it. So a lot of this is, and it's true. It's definitely true that PC is harder to develop for. There are more moving parts. That's why PCs generally lag behind in a bunch of ways as console development is hyper specialized. And then that went back a little bit for the PS4 era whenever they brought the parts closer together, and then we've gotten further away from that again. But PC is a platform as far as you and I are concerned. PC is a platform. We play games on PC. So it's like, the PC version's bad. Yeah. It's not, the AMD 2 generations ago platform. No, it's the PC platform. It's just that case of everyone's right, but everyone has their own incentives and their own places to feel, their own things they actually focus on.
For some performance stuff, like as an example, Connor on our team has been running it. He's been getting about 30 to 45 FPS on the epic preset with dips where things get hectic. To me, that's unplayable. That's completely unplayable.
Yep.
That said, I consider 30 to be unplayable. I have never played a console game on quality mode. I cannot fathom doing so.
Right. Well, now that's a good bridge for us to talk about the PS5 version and the performance issues, because as Digital Foundry point out, and this is something I can back from my own experience, quality version is better. I've not played it on quality version because I won't shoot myself in the feet, but it holds 30 a little more nicely.
Right.
And you know as well as I do, a stable frame rate can be better than a higher frame rate. If a higher frame rate
changes what you notice.
Yeah. And also, so I'm happy to play a game at lesser graphic settings for higher frame rate because I value the responsiveness, especially in a game like this, where if you get a couple frame drops and it interrupts like how your inputs felt, so your parry timing's off because of frame drops, you're going to have a very, very, very bad time. And thankfully it holds in combat mostly. They've done the right thing there. But you know what I traded off for having 60 FPS in combat? Around 720p. That's what Digital Foundry report, that the performance mode 60 FPS, the AMD FSR2 drops down to about 720p.
This is Xbox 360 this is, or maybe like you have like an Xbox One and it's everything's, or like Halo. I remember Halo 4 was running at some ridiculously low resolution just so it could run, and it's sad that we're there again. When you think about that on a big console, you think 1440 60, 4K 30.
I would love that, but as Digital Foundry point out in their analysis, a lot of it is down to this game is genuinely beautiful. It's just that this game would be beautiful if it ran at 1440 or 4K, but I'm getting 720 to 960, maybe 1080 if I'm lucky. And that makes all of the beauty that they've constructed in the world, the massive landscapes, the beautiful flora, all of the incredible ray tracing that you can't turn off on console, that's all there for the reflections, and genuinely has the game and its landscapes look absolutely profoundly beautiful. Except when you're looking at a handful of blurry pixels, it's not quite as beautiful. Or whenever you see Cal move his head, and the FSR image reconstruction has basically added a bunch of ghosting and a bunch of because you think about hair in video games and how it's often looked a wee bit rough and it's kind of hard to get. His hair looks quite nice until his head moves at performance mode, and then all you see is just bedhead Cal because it's all just pixels everywhere, all over the place. You see the craziest stuff, and it's like that combined with the frame rate dropping anyway.
It sounds like you're playing on a Series S.
That's
playing on a PS5.
That's what it feels like. And it's because they decided out the gate, let's make this game beautiful. Let's take absolutely no prisoners because we're EA or Respawn, we can do this. And then they didn't give their technical people enough time to actually go, okay, well, we can't get this to work. Here's additional options. Let's drop it down here. Let's drop it down here.
Is this one of those things where you would need generational swan song game levels of engineering to get these scenes working because they're so ambitious?
This feels like The Last of Us PS3, but not done. Basically.
Yeah, because you look at The Last of Us on PS3 when it came out, and that game was mind-blowing.
Yeah, compared
to PlayStation 3. Absolute madness.
Yeah, compared to when the first or second wave of games in the system, you go, what do you mean? It's like, oh yeah, that's what happens when engineers have time.
Mad.
And in this case, they didn't give them it. So I personally can't recommend this game, despite really enjoying most of it. I have a load of other issues with how combat design seems a little bit undercooked, and there's maybe a lot of undercookedness that kind of permeates through this game in a bunch of ways, where you've got the really simple, and obviously it was made in 3.5 years ago. Well, how did they do that? A lot of cases, I think it was, here you've got the Fallen Order formula, do that again.
Yeah. And
that's there in a lot of the level design, so there wasn't any designer sitting around going, how do we do this? They just went, I'm making a level, and a level looks like that. Easy, we can make loads of them. Sweet, work away. And they clearly did that. But there's cases where all the new stances, because you get 5 stances up from single blade and dual blade in the first game. Now you have single blade, dual wield, blaster, and crossguard, which is a 2-hand, which I was really excited to get. But none of the skill tree abilities in them all actually feel particularly good. So progression in that sense kind of goes, I'm too loosely spread. I can't upgrade everything, and none of it feels good. All my new abilities I get take too long to actually use a lot of the time. So I'm playing on hard mode, and enemies are really aggressive. And most of the challenges are, here's a room with 8 enemies, and they're all completely desyncing their attacks. So good luck doing anything. All you have to do is, you have to just try and play like a new player would play Dark Souls 1, which is run away in circles until you see an opening.
Yeah.
And it feels really fairly poor. So there's that. There's the fact that it's performance-wise, it's absolutely like dog. I hate it. Load times. That's another part of the performance issues that I want to talk about.
Big selling point of the PS5.
Huge selling point of the PS5. And every time I see anything that's even close to a loading screen, I'm like, I thought we were past this. And this is like, I've been playing a couple PS4 games in the PS5 recently. I'm like, loading times, why are these here? Shitty devs. Clearly, you should be able to skip this now. And like, I go to a door in the saloon, and before the interior of the saloon loads, I'm stood there for 10, 15 seconds waiting on a door's light to go green. And then the door opens and I dash through, and then like the ground plane of the game like flashes white for a couple of frames, or I see the most insane texture and level of detail popping that I've ever seen in an indoor environment. And it's full of that. It's constantly there. So you go into the saloon, you want to talk to someone, and then you go back out, there's another 10-second like loading door that's hidden. And I'm playing Metroid Prime.
That's
sure,
brutal.
that's fine. But not in this case. It's really bad. Every time you load a new area, you get frame rate hitches during the happening. I mean, this is me, but it's PS5, so I'm assuming roughly similar console to console experience. And it's really embarrassing that they ended up having to release this game in the time frame compared to everything else. But it's so good because like I was talking about, all the narrative stuff is like, the plot's not amazing, but it's good. It's serviceable. All the character stuff, all the character work is really good. The core theming around, effectively, it's Cal's been fighting his whole life, and he starts to wonder if there's anything more, or, what happens if he stops fighting? Can he physically do that? How does that reflect with his character and what his duty is, what his mission is as a Jedi? How does that interact with all of his characters that he's met? Like, how does he deal with like losing people? How does he deal with like, having to separate from people, stuff like that, because he's so obsessed with this fight? And it's all really good. They've done like A+ work. Fantastic stuff, to the point where if this was like a movie, this would easily be considered one of the better Star Wars movies in existence, because it's so damn good at that. All the set pieces are beautiful. They're really well put together. The 3D platforming, it's all very like, sometimes it's a wee bit like, you could have tweaked this a little bit to be a bit smoother, but you've got your double jump, you've got your dash, you've got your dash refreshes, you've got your wall run, jump, dash, wall run, jump, dash refreshes. It all feels really good. And then you turn the camera around and half the world loads in slightly lit, and your resolution drops to like 480p for like 2 frames. Or you're sat there going, this game was a free win. It was an incredible win for EA, incredible win for Respawn. And then someone just went, is that really it? No, ship it. This game needed another 3 to 6 months in the oven, to be honest.
Evidently. And
it's just it's so frustrating, because I really like it.
Maybe it's one of those cases where they're thinking, okay, well, the only people who've got to do work is maybe some artists, engineers, right? A crack team of people to solve these issues. What does the rest of the team do? We can't put them in it. It's like you wonder what incentives mean that this game has to get out. But yeah, it's weird, because it just seems like this would have been, big game of the year contender if there wasn't any black mark on it. In a way,
outside of the fact that it's releasing in 2023, yes.
Okay, fair. This has been an insane year for games.
It's still
in a good
contender.
way.
It's still a contender, I think.
Of course, Tears of the Kingdom.
Tears of the Kingdom and FF16.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Oh my god.
And that's maybe why they released it now, instead of giving it a couple of months. Maybe going, hey, what if we do July?
Maybe they're scared of. Yeah, maybe they thought, right, we can't go near those, but we would rather dominate right now instead of. I mean, what's Q3? You've got. Well, Starfield. Like maybe they didn't want to go into the Q3 rush.
Yeah, because if you're in July, then you're dealing with the middle of summer, where there's usually a summer game drought for a reason. You've got people still playing through Tears of the Kingdom and playing through Final Fantasy 16. You go to August, and they're not going to be worried about Armored Core 6. But at the same time, Armored Core 6 is going to be a bigger game than anyone expects, because people go, Elden Ring dudes made mecha. Holy shit, let's go. So there's that, and then you go into Starfield, and you go into the end of the year, and all the games that haven't been like that we don't know about, that people at EA will know about, is going to release at some point later in the year. So it feels like it's just get it out for some contractual obligation, I don't know, something like that. But it's so disappointing that EA did this, because I wanted to call this one of their like biggest wins yet. I was expecting that going in when I knew about the game launch, not after the couple of weeks of performance worries. I was expecting this to be a massive, just completely knocked out of the park for EA and Respawn, because I love what Respawn do. I think they are probably like pound for pound one of my favorite devs in the industry, just because of their approach, just like the fact that they're willing to make this kind of game today and go, no, we can do a Souls-like combat with a Jedi with 3D platforming in a way that like, oh yeah, you're playing, because you compare it to like an Uncharted.
Oh, you're playing a game, like so firmly a game. It's not a shit. Like there's times where I look at I don't want to say Tomb Raider, but it's like when you are Tomb Raiding and he's doing like the most implausible bullshit, and then you realize, oh, it's because a game, and they were happy to let it also be a game.
Yeah, it's like I thought about Horizons so many times in this game. Maybe it's just because Kyle and Aloy are both ginger, but like the prospect of, okay, well, I'm climbing. I was thinking, how did I spend 15 hours in this game? And I went, well, most of what I was doing was shuffling around things and climbing. Why was I not annoyed at that? It's like, oh right, because they made it a video game, because it was part of a platforming challenge where I have to time my jumps. I have to, there's you climb up the left side of something, the wind blows you to the right, so you have to go to the far left, jump to the left, the wind will carry you, then you dash in to catch. That's video game.
Satisfying.
What's not video game is holding up for like 35, 45, 50 seconds. They made a video game of it, and that's why I love it. But I can't, in any good faith, recommend it to anyone to buy until it's fixed.
At least right now. It's why I'm glad that I'm only playing Fallen Order now. I don't know why. Like I played a bit of it and I just never got around to it. I am so thoroughly having a great time playing Fallen Order, and like the narrative hasn't really got going or anything yet. I'm about to go to Kashyyyk after doing the other two planets. I've got my dual saber unlocked. And I'm just having fun, and it's like, as you said, just the going around the levels video game part.
Yeah.
There was one or two times I was like, oh yeah, this is okay. I guess we're doing Star Wars Spyro now. Cool. So I from that perspective, absolutely loving it, and I'm glad, because it's probably going to take me at least a fortnight to finish it, and I expect that given the sheer motivation of this launch, it will be in a better state by then, like by the time that I finally get to it. What I'd say is definitely play the first one if you haven't. The funny thing here, though, if you're on one of the newer cards, now I saw the headline, modder doubles FPS in the game.
Yep.
And immediately I thought, oh, what is, has de novo has some weird thing happened? And they're like, oh no, the game actually doesn't run any better. It's just NVIDIA comes in and polishes up a few frames for you. So a modder put DLSS 3.0 in. DLSS generally...
Well, 3.0 is frame generation.
Exactly. So
yeah,
that's where...
it's cheating.
Like FSR versus DLSS 3 is not fair, because FSR is not doing frame generation. Like actually generating full new frames. DLSS 2 versus AMD FSR, I am not. I think DLSS has the edge, but I know that it's not. Is it a vast gulf?
I'm not actually sure with FSR 2 versus DLSS 2.
Yeah.
All I know is if they're trying to show off FSR 2 this way, then AMD should get a refund, because maybe it's impressive that the game's holding 60 frames per second, but all I'm looking at is a load of pixels blowing about on my screen, which is not a good experience, generally speaking. But I feel like because I was the same with you when you saw the double FPS. I'm like, oh, is this a Nier Automata issue? Is this why was, I can't remember what the number was, why is the global illumination points set so stupidly high when you can drop it to like 24 or something with no visual difference and insane performance gain? But it is actually just, they tried too hard. They were too ambitious, and they weren't willing to pull that ambition down. Because I feel like a lot of this isn't like a technically bad game. It's a technically really unoptimized game that's punching way, 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 way too far above its weight. It's like, this is a game that should come out in 3 years' time in terms of visual quality and techniques they attempted. But they just kind of went for it anyway instead of going for something more realistic. And that's what really annoys me, because it's like Digital Foundry point out, clearly stuff like ray tracing and all the visual choices are how they want this game to look. It was built with that in mind. And that's why it is a gorgeous game. but it's not a game worth playing. That gorgeous.
Do you know what? It's just this thing with ray tracing. I always think about how ray tracing was. I mean, it was even involved in the renaming from GTX to RTX.
Yeah.
Yet, the RTX 20 series couldn't ray trace well. Like, I know it could versus doing it in software, but in any capacity that it would make you want to turn ray tracing on in a game that's not like Minecraft or Quake, you were never... Like, you just weren't doing it. I remember Battlefield 5 came out. Oh, ray tracing was involved. And I had a card that could do RTX. I turn ray tracing on. It no longer hits my performance standards. And it's as if it's just always like that with ray tracing. And with these new consoles, like, I don't know, maybe a 4090 is what can ray trace to the point of you can get your ray tracing and really, enjoy the game that you're playing performance-wise.
Yeah, like Cyberpunk's Overdrive mode that Digital Foundry have at a reasonable, like 30 FPS or something, sometimes-ish.
That is not playable.
Yeah. I know what you mean. It's like, the industry is basically dancing along to the whims of Nvidia. Yeah, trying to get their ray tracing push, trying to get their, it feels like we're back in the like mid PS3 days, where everyone's going, what do we need? Graphics. When do we need them? Far too soon. Or like, but what if you made the game look great instead of unbelievable, and then it ran, and then you didn't have mostly negative reviews on Steam? Think about that one, EA. I would recommend that for anyone who's making these decisions.
Think about the likes of like Lumen and Nanite.
Yeah.
And the latest versions of Unreal Engine. I have to assume they weren't able to use those.
No, this is UE4.
For this game. Yeah, it's a UE4 game. So that's basically...
And it doesn't stutter. It does everything else, but it doesn't stutter.
Yeah, it's a UE4 game still. Whereas a lot of this stuff done in Unreal 5, you perhaps wouldn't have the same issues. And that's because I have to assume this game has to do with extreme horsepower, what systems like Nanite and Lumen are doing by, essentially deleting detail where you won't need it before it incurs a performance hit, because you won't be able to see that detail. So I'm looking at Matt, but I've just put an object in front of Matt, right? So now imagine the game engine stops rendering Matt. It's like that wrote large.
Frustrum culling, but insane.
Yeah, big frustrum culling. Look, it's a shame. What's gone on here is they've said, for example, players using cutting-edge multi-threaded chipsets designed for Windows 11 were encountering problems in Windows 10, or high-end GPUs coupled with lower-performing CPUs also saw unexpected frame loss. Yeah, I think people were just seeing like very, very bizarre utilization. They overall said sorry, but like, here's the problem. Like, I know people have said this was a non-apology. I have a feeling this is the most they could possibly get away with. Because the facts are, this wasn't ready. I am sure that per their performance guidelines, system requirements in Steam, this thing is barely ready. You're playing it in a PS5 where it still has a host of issues. I think does the Series X have ever so slightly more horsepower?
So on a pure raw numerical basis, slightly.
Yeah.
But I don't... it's annoying because Digital Foundry didn't get a Series X code, so they haven't released any in-depth stuff, and I haven't seen anyone talk about the Series X performance, so I'm not entirely sure, but I think whenever we see the Series... Like, it might run slightly better, but also they probably won't, because of market share sizes, they might not have targeted optimizations as hard for the Series X, and you kind of have this awkward place of, man, like... It's such a shame because it's such a good game otherwise, and if the market were flooded with games like this, I would be in my element. Not 100% my element because it's a little bit too AAA linear narrative. It's not linear, so there's like the open worldy areas and stuff that actually feel really good to navigate and stuff like that. But it's just like great game, but you botched the actual launch because of technical
Well, it's
things.
okay. Hey, Redfall's coming out soon.
Oh, that'll be...
So... I know people,
PC gamers...
we're at 6 turbo scuffs right now. We may be at 7 very soon.
Thank God Final Fantasy 16 isn't launching on PC. I wonder why that is.
Yeah. Maybe we'll talk about the PC issue, but yeah, man, that's the situation. Fantastic game. Under no circumstances buy it, or at the very least, I mean, if you're on PC and you can buy it within the refund window and see how it runs in your system, who knows? Like, you could be able to get a solid 60 after you tweak the settings, which, if so, is fantastic, in which case, play it. You'll almost certainly have a great time.
Yep.
This is a game that I'd say should be, in the fullness of time, in your library.
That's something that I think we just have to say about most video games as they release now, which is a problem that needs to be solved sooner rather than later. Because there's a bit of an elephant in the room here, and that is this game was more expensive than other games have been, and it runs like dog.
$69.99.
Yeah, maybe we'll talk about that soon, because that's another good thing we really need to dig into. Shit ain't working. Why buy video games if they don't work? That's the question, right?
Yeah, and just so that's whenever we say $69.99, by the way, just for everybody in the United States,
that's $2,000.
Your equivalent there would be $87.72.
Yeah,
but I suppose a bit of a difference. We we don't have to pay additional sales tax, so that's like the sticker price. I don't know how any of that's dealt with for you guys on your game stores. I don't know if in the PS store, you see just the price you buy that, but the amount of money that we pay for it, if you translate that into US dollars at the current exchange rate, is nearly $90.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of money for a video game. Anyway, look, that's it. We've rambled on long enough. Let me know what's your time been like with this game. We'll have more on the channel soon. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.